Iran is facing one of the most serious periods of internal unrest in its modern history. With a population of approximately 92 million, the country is witnessing developments that go beyond localized demonstrations. According to opposition-linked reports, open-source intelligence analysts, and regional observers, unrest has expanded across multiple provinces and cities simultaneously. Reports circulating through activist networks and OSINT monitoring groups claim that protests or clashes have occurred in dozens of urban centers across Iran's 31 provinces. These reports describe widespread civil resistance, with local government buildings, police stations, and security outposts becoming focal points of confrontation in several cities. Analysts caution, however, that access to independent verification remains limited due to communication restrictions and state media controls. Observers note that the geographic spread of unrest is significant. Cities including Isfahan, Mashhad, Hamadan, Shiraz, and others have been repeatedly mentioned in reports as experiencing sustained demonstrations or confrontations. Hamadan, located roughly 150 kilometers west of Tehran, has drawn particular attention in opposition media due to its proximity to the capital. Claims have also emerged regarding unrest near the city of Qom, a religious and political center of the Islamic Republic. These accounts suggest mounting pressure on the central government, though control on the ground remains contested and difficult to independently confirm. Security dynamics appear to be a central factor in the evolving situation. According to assessments by analysts and leaked intelligence summaries reported by international media outlets, including Western newspapers, there are indications of strain within Iran's security apparatus. These reports describe incidents of fatigue, internal disagreement, and limited cases of defection or refusal to act among members of security forces, including the Basij militia, and elements linked to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. Iranian authorities have not publicly confirmed these claims. Footage and imagery circulating online from areas such as Shiraz and Nurabad show civilians confronting security forces, in some cases surrounding or entering police facilities. Analysts emphasize that while such imagery demonstrates the intensity of unrest, its representativeness across the entire country cannot be conclusively determined due to information gaps. Several security experts describe the situation in parts of the country as resembling an asymmetric internal conflict, with large civilian crowds facing armored vehicles and riot control units. According to these analyses, numerical pressure, persistent demonstrations, and the erosion of fear among protesters may be reducing the effectiveness of traditional crowd control tactics. A key development highlighted by analysts is the reported difficulty faced by specialized security units in rapidly regaining control of certain locations near Tehran. Reports claim that some areas remained contested longer than expected, suggesting possible coordination challenges or overstretch within the security forces. These assessments remain based on indirect evidence and leaked information rather than official acknowledgement. Parallel to events on the ground, international attention has focused on reports concerning contingency planning by Iran's leadership. Investigative reporting cited by Western intelligence sources has referenced an alleged emergency evacuation scenario involving Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei should the central government lose effective control of Tehran. According to these reports, the plan would involve a small circle of senior aides and family members. Moscow has been cited by some intelligence analysts as a potential destination under such a scenario, reflecting long-standing political and strategic ties between Tehran and Moscow. These assessments remain speculative and have not been officially confirmed by Iranian or Russian authorities.
Flight tracking data has added another layer to the analysis. OSINT researchers have observed increased activity involving IL-76 heavy transport aircraft over Tehran in recent days. These aircraft, reportedly linked to Russian and Belarusian operators, have drawn attention due to their frequency and timing. Analysts stress that such flights could have multiple explanations, including military logistics, diplomatic transfers, or emergency planning, and no definitive conclusions can be drawn without official disclosures. Two primary interpretations are currently debated among analysts. One suggests the aircraft may be delivering crowd control equipment or security supplies to Iranian authorities amid ongoing unrest. The other proposes that the flights could be related to contingency evacuation or asset protection measures by senior figures within the regime. Neither interpretation has been independently verified. Financial considerations are also part of this discussion. Analysts frequently reference SATAD, a powerful network of economic holdings reportedly controlled by the Supreme Leader's office, which has been estimated by investigative organizations to be worth tens of billions of dollars. Speculation exists that safeguarding such assets could factor into contingency planning, though no concrete evidence has been presented. Most experts agree on one point. The situation appears to be driven primarily by internal dynamics rather than foreign military intervention. Reports of supply disruptions, communication shutdowns, and command challenges within security units suggest systemic stress rather than isolated unrest. Former Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, speaking from exile, has issued statements calling for unity and nonviolent resistance. Analysts note that such statements can influence public discourse but caution against overstating their direct operational impact on events inside Iran. As the situation continues to develop, analysts emphasize the need for caution. Information emerging from Iran remains fragmented, often unverifiable, and heavily influenced by competing narratives. What can be said with confidence is that Iran is experiencing an unusually broad and intense period of internal challenge, the outcome of which remains uncertain. Reza Pahlavi, speaking from exile, issued a direct appeal to Iran's security forces. In his remarks, he emphasized that their role was not to defend a political system, but to protect Iran's long-standing national heritage, which he described as spanning approximately 2,600 years. He urged members of the armed forces and security services not to turn their weapons against civilians. Analysts suggest that this message resonated with ongoing tensions inside the security apparatus, where questions of national identity and loyalty to the Islamic Republic have increasingly come into conflict. Several observers argue that such appeals may contribute to internal divisions within the security forces, particularly at a time when the government is already facing sustained pressure. These assessments remain analytical interpretations rather than confirmed causal links. At the same time, Western intelligence-linked analyses have focused on the psychological state of Iran's senior leadership. According to these assessments, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei has shown increasing concern for personal security in recent years, including reported periods of isolation and heightened protective measures during regional military escalations, such as clashes involving Israel. Analysts interpret these actions as indicators of a leadership operating under growing stress and uncertainty. Intelligence assessments cited by Western sources further suggest that Khamenei's physical health and decision-making capacity may be declining, potentially limiting his ability to manage rapidly unfolding events. These evaluations are based on indirect intelligence and expert analysis, not official confirmation. Within this context, contingency plans reportedly discussed in earlier intelligence reporting, particularly an emergency evacuation scenario, are now viewed by some analysts as increasingly plausible rather than hypothetical. Public slogans reported from protests, including chants calling for the removal of the country's leadership, have been interpreted by analysts as reflecting a broader rejection of the current political system. Comparisons have been drawn between the present moment and the collapse of Iran's monarchy in 1979, although experts caution that historical parallels should not be overstated. While the former Shah ultimately went into exile in Egypt, current intelligence reporting suggests that Moscow could serve as a potential destination for Iran's current leadership under an extreme scenario, reflecting existing geopolitical alignments. Several analysts argue that the unrest in Iran should not be viewed solely as a domestic issue. Instead, they frame it as a potential stress point within a broader network of authoritarian partnerships extending across regions, including relationships linking Moscow, Beijing, Caracas, and Damascus. According to this view, instability in Iran could have consequences that extend beyond a single change of government. Economic factors feature prominently in this analysis. For years, Iran has faced severe economic pressure, including currency devaluation, high inflation reported by various sources to exceed 100% at times, and reduced access to basic goods. Protest slogans such as "Neither Gaza nor Lebanon, my life for Iran," which have been widely reported, are interpreted by analysts as evidence of public frustration over Iran's financial support for regional proxy groups while domestic living conditions deteriorated. Experts note that Iran has been accused by Western governments of providing financial and military assistance to groups such as Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Russia's military campaign in Ukraine, including the supply of Shahed series drones. Analysts argue that public awareness of these expenditures has become a central grievance among protesters, who increasingly associate foreign engagements with domestic economic hardship. From a geopolitical perspective, Analysts suggest that internal instability in Iran could disrupt established supply chains that Russia has relied upon, particularly for Iranian-produced unmanned aerial vehicles and other military equipment. While no official confirmation has been issued, several defense analysts consider Iran's military exports to be a significant component of Russia's operational capacity in Ukraine. The reported presence of Belarusian cargo aircraft operating in and out of Tehran has drawn further attention from OSINT researchers. These flights are viewed by analysts as evidence of Iran's growing reliance on external partners for security-related logistics. While multiple explanations remain possible, experts note that the need to import crowd control equipment or related supplies would signal a serious erosion of domestic state capacity. Regional implications are also under scrutiny. Analysts suggest that Iran's regional allies, including Hezbollah and the Houthis, could face operational and financial constraints if instability in Tehran disrupts funding and command structures. In this scenario, Iran's position as a central pillar of what is often described as the axis of resistance would be significantly weakened. Ideologically, some analysts point to the visible resurgence of Iranian nationalism and public interest in pre-revolutionary symbols, including renewed attention to Reza Pahlavi, as a challenge to Iran's current political identity. They argue that a potential future Iranian government oriented towards secular governance and Western economic integration would fundamentally alter Tehran's relationship with Moscow. Energy markets are another area of concern raised by experts. An Iran free from sanctions and reintegrated into global markets could emerge as a major competitor to Russia in oil and gas exports, potentially reducing Moscow's leverage in global energy supply chains. From this broader perspective, analysts conclude that a potential leadership exit to Moscow would represent more than an individual relocation. It would signal a strategic rupture with long-term consequences for Russia's southern security environment and its broader narrative of a stable, multipolar alliance system. Observers note that ongoing unrest in countries aligned with Moscow raises questions about the durability of these partnerships. Finally, defense analysts emphasize that Russia's dependence on Iranian military technology, particularly Shahed-136 drones and related systems, creates a vulnerability. Should Iran's current leadership lose power, the continuity of these supplies could be jeopardized, directly affecting Russia's military operations. While outcomes remain uncertain, experts agree that developments inside Iran are being closely monitored for their potential regional and global impact. Analysts widely agree that a future Iranian administration, whether constitutional or democratic, would be likely to reassess Tehran's military and strategic cooperation with Moscow. Several experts argue that one of the first policy changes under a new government could involve ending Iran's military exports to Russia, including the transfer of drones, weapons components, and technical assistance. Defense analysts note that even if Russia currently possesses production facilities, technical documentation, or localized manufacturing capabilities linked to Iranian systems, a change in Iran's political leadership could still disrupt these arrangements. According to this assessment, the loss of Iranian cooperation would significantly affect Russia's ability to sustain long-range strike operations, particularly at a time when its defense industry is under pressure from Western sanctions and constrained access to key components. Military experts emphasize that Iran's role in supplying unmanned aerial vehicles, especially Shahed-type systems, has been an important factor in Russia's ability to conduct sustained aerial attacks in Ukraine. Should this supply line be interrupted, analysts argue that Russia's operational reach and strike frequency could be reduced. In this scenario, the impact would extend beyond the battlefield, affecting Russia's broader logistical framework rather than representing a single tactical setback. From this perspective, the potential collapse of Iran's current leadership would not only weaken Russia's military capabilities, but also challenge elements of its defense doctrine, which has increasingly relied on cost-effective, mass-produced systems supplied or developed with foreign partners. Beyond military implications, analysts also point to reputational consequences for Moscow. Russia has increasingly become associated with providing refuge to leaders removed from power or facing international isolation. Former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych is currently residing in Russia, and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad relied heavily on Russian protection during critical phases of the Syrian conflict. Intelligence analysts suggest that if Iran's leadership were also to seek shelter in Moscow, it would reinforce perceptions of Russia as a destination of last resort for embattled autocrats. This perception, experts argue, further isolates Russia diplomatically and complicates its efforts to project itself as the center of an alternative global order. Rather than appearing as a stabilizing power, Moscow risks being viewed primarily as a patron for weakened or displaced regimes. Some analysts believe this development could also affect Russia's relationship with China. Beijing's strategic priorities in the Middle East are largely centered on stability, energy security, and uninterrupted trade. Iran has been an important component of China's energy strategy. If Iran were to experience a rapid political collapse despite its close alignment with Moscow, experts suggest that Chinese policymakers could reassess Russia's reliability as a strategic partner. According to this line of analysis, China is unlikely to commit long-term resources to partnerships perceived as unstable or declining. As a result, unrest in Iran and Russia's limited ability to shape the outcome could deepen existing imbalances within the Russia-China relationship rather than strengthen it.
Strategic analysts further warn that Russia's broader regional posture could be affected. Its military presence in Syria, access to Iranian airspace, and influence across the Middle East have all benefited from close coordination with Tehran. A shift in Iran's political alignment would place these arrangements under significant strain. Importantly, experts emphasize that this process would not be driven primarily by Western military action, but by internal developments within Iran itself. In this interpretation, popular pressure and domestic political change would act as the central force reshaping regional power dynamics. From a broader geopolitical standpoint, analysts conclude that Russia's strategic depth could be reduced if it loses access to Iranian military cooperation and regional influence. The alliances Moscow once described as resilient and long-term may prove more fragile than anticipated when confronted by internal public opposition within partner states.
Finally, analysts caution that while these scenarios outline significant risks for Russia, outcomes remain uncertain. What is clear, they argue, is that developments inside Iran have implications that extend far beyond its borders, influencing military supply chains, alliance structures, and the balance of power across Eurasia. As events continue to unfold, these assessments will remain under close scrutiny by governments, analysts, and observers worldwide.